Yesterday, James Gunn attacked me on Twitter for talking about how he doesn't like Henry Cavill. And the whole situation blew up. It was in the Hollywood Reporter and various other websites that do articles. Partially, this blew up because the response he gave was absolutely savage. And I will say, as a shit poster and clapback type person myself, I gotta respect it. But my God, a mom's basement joke in 2022 from the new president of a major studio. What a world. The other, and arguably more important reason that this story blew up is because the surrounding and developing story of what James Gunn and Peter Safran are going to do with their DCU is massive news. We as DC fans have been on a roller coaster ride of emotions, ups and downs, and confusing things being said about what is actually going to happen with this new DCU. And so I'm going to first address what happened, why I think he reacted the way that he did, and whether or not I still think that he doesn't like Henry Cavill. But then I also want to break down everything that was in the articles last week, the new updates that the trades have given about what exactly is going on behind the scenes, and James Gunn's own tweet thread where he addresses the Hollywood Reporter article that says that Wonder Woman 3 is no longer going to happen. So as for James Gunn bodying me on Twitter yesterday, I guess the real question is, did I fuck up? And my honest answer is kind of. I mean, look, I've thought a lot about the exchange that happened, and I can see how in James Gunn's mind, maybe he felt like I was literally calling him a liar to his face. And I actually have other theories as to why he reacted the way that he reacted, but I can sort of steel man the side of him really wanting to rebuke or debunk this person that he probably considers to be a total rando, essentially saying things that, even if they were true, are uncomfortable truths and probably nothing that he would ever admit to in a public social setting. So in that sense, and again, in the sense that like I too like to clap back and act crazy on Twitter, like I totally get where he's coming from. I do think objectively it's a bad look for him. I think it's pretty unprofessional. And I also think that he's developed a sort of narrative now where if he doesn't actually bring Henry Cavill back, a lot of people are going to be even more upset than they would have been otherwise. Because I think if you look at the way that his comments were taken yesterday, a lot of folks are saying, oh, this means he's absolutely going to be bringing Henry Cavill back as Superman. Now, look, I'm going to explain more of this in my live stream tomorrow at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. We'll go over the whole thing, and I'll really like kind of take you through the narrative of like why I even responded to him in the way that I did and what I actually think is going on with James Gunn, because I absolutely think he overreacted, lost his cool, and that can mean a number of different things. Like it could absolutely be the case that he really doesn't like Henry Cavill and he didn't want that information to be out there publicly, and so he's really trying to sort of diminish the narrative that I started about that, and maybe that's why he got so triggered. And I also think it's totally fair for people to be like, look, he's saying it's not true. He's publicly saying and rebuking pretty savagely that that's not a correct narrative, and he's, you know, trying to make it seem like I don't have any sources or I don't know at all what I'm doing, and we'll get into more of that tomorrow on the stream. But my problem is, I don't know if I can take James Gunn at his word. You know, it's up to you to decide it. James Gunn has a habit of trying to smash down narratives surrounding leaks or scoops about his projects in media. Like the best example, and the one that really caused me to even say what I said to James on Twitter yesterday, was last year in March when the Illuminati ran an article talking about how James Gunn was casting Adam Warlock for Guardians of the Galaxy 3. And in that article from the Illuminati, they talk about how Marvel was casting and they were looking for a Zac Efron type. And although I don't know for sure, this is likely coming from a casting grid that they got access to, and it's a similar situation to She-Hulk, in which Marvel Studios did have a casting grid that said they were looking for an Alison Brie type actress. They, of course, then cast Tatiana Maslany. But the problem is that James Gunn retweeted or commented on this article from the Illuminati and said it was absolute bullshit, and that if he wanted to cast Zac Efron, he would just cast Zac Efron. But that's not only not true, it's a misrepresentation of what the Illuminati was saying. And just months later, it was confirmed that, of course, he's cast Adam Warlock. And I would tell you that I think Will Coulter is absolutely a Zac Efron type. James Gunn also said on Twitter that the only people in the world that really knew what was happening with the new DCU was him and Peter Safran. But according to the Hollywood Reporter article from last week, Jason Momoa is done being Aquaman and will be cast as Lobo. And of course, the timing of Jason Momoa seemingly being very excited about being Lobo from the context of the video he released and then the interview he did with comicbook.com, it would appear that James Gunn told Jason Momoa about somewhat of his new DCU plan and then turned around and told us all on Twitter that nobody knew but him and Peter. And so again, it's up to you whether or not you want to take James Gunn at his word. But I also think it's absolutely fair to say he despises insiders, leakers, and probably YouTubers. Anybody that, you know, has this sort of new media angle on the stuff that he's making. I just assume, based on the way he goes after scoopers and such, that he really doesn't like that sort of sub-industry or whatever you want to call it. The people that engage with talk about leaks, rumors, etc. So that's why I told James Gunn that since he debunked the thing about him not liking Cavill, a bunch more people reached out to me to tell me that I was absolutely correct and that he really doesn't like Cavill. And that's totally true. And perhaps it's not how he feels. But what I'm saying is, I had a bunch of people reach out to me, very reliable people that I know have incredible track records and have deep ties to the industry. And they're literally telling me he not only doesn't like Cavill, that it was directly his decision to stop production on Man of Steel 2, that he has not taken a meeting with Cavill, he has not made a call to Cavill, and he wants nothing to do with Henry Cavill's Superman. And so maybe none of that's true. Maybe he loves Cavill. Maybe him and Cavill go on fishing trips all the time, and he's going to put a bunch of photos out there on the internet and really make me look even more foolish. But I really don't think so. I think it's pretty fair that he doesn't like Cavill. I've also heard that he has major problems with the Snyder Cut movement and how to navigate that whole situation. And many people at Warner Brothers view what happened with the Snyder Cut as very bad for the DC brand. And so there's like many different reasons to not like Cavill and to not take these meetings with him and not want to have him as the Superman of the DCU. It's just weird. Like, I really like Henry Cavill Superman. I want more Henry Cavill Superman, but I also just do what I do, talk about stories out there in the nerdy world. Many people over the years have sort of come to me and given me insider information. And yeah, like I am literally just some nerdy dude trying to make informative videos and talk about and speculate about what could be happening. But I don't ass pull. I don't make stuff up for clicks. I'm not in that game. I actually try to be as accurate as I possibly can with what I'm talking about and what I'm essentially reporting. So again, more on that situation in the live stream. We'll go into the whole thing. I have some theories about like what's going on with James Gunn, but let's now talk about all of the updates to the actual story. And the story is James Gunn and Peter Safran are planning out the future of the DCU. They have a 10-year plan, a 4-year contract. They absolutely have to get going. And apparently, according to the Hollywood Reporter, they're pitching their whole plan to David Zaslav this week. It more or less comes down to one big question. Will he reboot for his new DCU? Let's begin catching people up on what has happened at Warner Brothers since David Zaslav came into power. David Zaslav is the new CEO of Warner Bros. Discovery, which is the new company that was formed after Warner Brothers was merged with Discovery. And this guy is now in charge of everything over at Warner Bros. Discovery, most important for the sake of this video, DC. And Zaslav has made a couple of things very clear from the time he came on board. He's basically talked a lot about how he wants to copy what Kevin Feige and Disney has done with Marvel Studios. And there are two basic ideas that he wants to copy. Number one, he wants the studio itself to be streamlined, have its own control, and only answer to really, really high up people. And the other side of it is the canon. He wants a singular canon. canon, as many people believe that that's something Marvel has been able to leverage to give extra hype to some of their more middle-of-the-road projects. Like, you might go check out a Marvel movie or a Marvel show that maybe you wouldn't be as interested in just at its face value, but the fact that it ties into this wider world and will eventually connect to big event-like movies like The Avengers is a huge part of the draw. And so Zaslav has not been shy about saying that this is what he wants to do. Even recently saying things like James Gunn and Peter Safran have this great plan and there will not be 4 Batmen. And so Zaslav comes in, starts making all of these changes, and of course has been talking a lot about DC in particular, talking about how it's the greatest IP on the planet, they want to leverage it, they have the opportunity to be just as big as Marvel Studios, and with that has been his search for a Kevin Feige. There were rumors of Dan Lin coming in to fill this role, and seemingly out of nowhere, the actual position was given to 2 people, James Gunn and Peter Safran. These 2 gentlemen were given the task of being in charge of the producing and creative side of DC Studios, and they were tasked with coming up with the 10-year plan or the DC Bible for what they want to do with the cinematic universe. And while all of this was happening, there were other plans that were pre-established, sort of conflicting with what Zaslav, Peter Safran, and James Gunn wanted to do. Most notably, there was the plan already set in motion by Walter Hamada and the previous leadership at Warner Brothers Discovery. This is what was going on with the Aquaman movie and the Flash movie and setting up the multiverse and this possible crisis event that they were going to do. Oh, and by the way, this was recently confirmed by the Hollywood Reporter in a Heat Vision newsletter in which they talked about Walter Hamada having a plan to eventually bring back Henry Cavill as Superman and do a big crisis event. And so again, this does appear to be the original plan that was put in place by Walter Hamada for what they were going to do with the many branching DC universes that they had. On top of that, there was another plan at play called the Rock Plan, where Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson and Danny Garcia, his producing partner, was trying to assert more control over the future of DC and was trying to position the Black Adam movie as this massive success and a step forward for DC overall. This is why The Rock went so hard promoting Black Adam and why he was so hell-bent on getting Henry Cavill back as Superman to show the fans that he was in their corner, that he was listening to them. And again, according to new information from the Hollywood Reporter, The Rock had a very different plan from what Walter Hamada had and wanted Henry Cavill to be a part of his plan. Not do this crazy crisis thing, but instead have Black Adam fight against Superman and then maybe create another Superman movie. But this also shows that The Rock and Henry Cavill were sort of lying about what the studio wanted to do. The Rock was very vocal about the old leadership not wanting Henry Cavill back, and he was sort of touting Henry Cavill coming back to the role of Superman as his big accomplishment. And while Dwayne Johnson was trying all of this, and while movies were being produced according to the old Hamada plan, Zaslav was busy courting Safran and James Gunn to come up with their own plan. But that all brings us to the craziness of this week, where we took another crazy plunge on the never-ending roller coaster of being a DC fan. First, there were all these crazy rumors that Ben Affleck had been cut from Aquaman 2. Michael Keaton was no longer in Aquaman 2 as well. Then there were weird rumors that even Henry Cavill's cameo in The Flash was being cut. Then Gal Gadot posted something really weird, thanking the fans for allowing her to play Wonder Woman. And then the Hollywood Reporter dropped a bombshell article talking about how Wonder Woman 3 was not moving forward, Jason Momoa was no longer going to be Aquaman after the next Aquaman film and was instead going to be recast as Lobo, and the article even implied that Henry Cavill's future as Superman was being put on hold. This, of course, gave the impression that James Gunn and Peter Safran's new plan for DC was a reboot, and they were actively cutting off all of these different pre-established franchises because they didn't fit into what their plans would be. But as I said at the very start of this video, more information has come out and James Gunn himself has commented on the exact article. First up, when it comes to Gal Gadot and Wonder Woman 3, there's definitely not going to be a Wonder Woman 3 with Patty Jenkins involved, but it is still possible that Gal Gadot will be the one playing Diana in whatever James Gunn future idea is. New details are saying that it actually had nothing to do with James Gunn and Peter Safran, and instead DeLuca and Abdi, the current leadership over on DC, they were the ones that rejected what Patty Jenkins turned in for the pitch for Wonder Woman 3. And so these two people really didn't like it, and they offered for Patty to rewrite the script to better tie into what they wanted to do. And apparently Patty Jenkins was very upset by this and literally linked a Wikipedia article to what a character arc is.
Wow.
Needless to say, there's a lot of bad blood there, and so she's not going to be doing the next Wonder Woman. However, it is not what we first thought. And what we first thought was that James Gunn looked at what they wanted to do with the Wonder Woman character and said, unfortunately, that doesn't fit with my new DC, so bye-bye. But you see, it does get kind of weird because James Gunn did tease a photo of Lobo the day after Jason Momoa made some crazy video post on social media about something he was really excited about. It was later detailed in an interview that Jason Momoa's favorite comic book character is Lobo. And so it really seems, because the Hollywood Reporter is saying that that's actually verified by other sources that he's going to come back as Lobo, it seems that Gunn shared some of his new plans with Jason Momoa weeks ago. And if it is, of course, true that James Gunn and Safran were ironing out their DC Bible, then they obviously had to have some ideas before that they were refining when they were in Aspen. And of course, we have to talk about James Gunn's reply to the article, which happened 12 hours after it was first published. James Gunn says here, so, as for the story yesterday in the Hollywood Reporter, some of it is true, some of it is half true, some of it is not true, and some of it we haven't decided yet whether it's true or not. Although this first month at DC has been fruitful, building the next 10 years of story takes time, and we're still just beginning. Peter and I chose to helm DC Studios knowing we were coming into a fractious environment, both in the stories being told and in the audience itself, and there would be an unavoidable transitional period as we moved into telling a cohesive story across film, TV, animation, and gaming. But in the end, the drawbacks of that transitional period were dwarfed by the creative possibilities and the opportunity to build upon what has worked in DC so far and to help rectify what has not. We know we are not going to make every single person happy every step of the way, but we can promise everything we do is done in the service of the story and in the service of the DC characters we know you cherish and we have cherished our whole lives. As for more answers about the future of the DCU, I will sadly have to ask you to wait. We are giving these characters and their stories the time and attention they deserve, and we ourselves still have a lot more questions to ask and answer. And so in some ways, this clears some stuff up. In some ways, this asks even more questions. Basically, some of what's in the Hollywood Reporter article is true. Some of it's half true, some of it's not, and some of it they still haven't decided on. He talks about how the environment is fractured. The DC brand and the DC content is fractured, and so is the fan base. And I think that's completely accurate. He goes on to talk about how there's going to be people upset during this transitional period, which will see DC become a singular, cohesive story, which will take place across film, TV, animation, and gaming. He talks about not having everyone be happy about what they're going to do, but they're doing it in the service of the story and in the service of the DC characters. And so there's many different ways to sort of think about this. I will just say that between some of the new updates surrounding the Hollywood Reporter article, between James Gunn saying that some of it's true, some of it's not, I just have to come out and say that I think the clear idea that was set up in that article about a reboot is not necessarily 100% true. Although I do think James Gunn could have said that the actors or certain stories are going to be safe moving forward, forward in his tweet storm. I think if he really wanted to make that clear, he could have said that. It is possible that that's one of the things he's saying. They haven't decided whether or not it's true, because maybe they're just trying to consider who should still be the character, who should be recast. Like, it feels like that's what they're going to do with Momoa. So I think it is possible that you get a soft reboot, but that really begs the question, man. That's really the whole discussion here is, are we going to reboot or not? And if you think about what they want this cohesive story. It's all a singular universe. It's all connected so that the video games connect in to the universe, so that the animation stuff connects into the universe. The TV and the movies, they all connect into the same universe. And I just don't see how you go from the fractured environment we are currently in, that James Gunn admits that we are in, into that cohesive world without at least a soft reboot. And so, in conclusion, James Gunn is rebuking the idea that he doesn't like Henry Cavill, to me implying that he will keep Henry Cavill around as Superman. The Hollywood Reporter article, which first made it really look like there was going to be a hard reboot, has been rebutted a little bit by even more information that came out, and James Gunn himself said there were things in that article that were not true. The bottom line is, a lot of things are being shaken up. We're not 100% sure what's going to happen next, but we should know really soon. James Gunn is going to be pitching this with Peter Safran to David Zaslav sometime this week, and we expect more things will leak out, and James Gunn will probably freak out and try to smash down anybody that talks about them. If you like this video, smash a like on this video, subscribe to the channel for more updates about DC, Marvel, Star Wars, and all those fun kind of things. If you want to watch more, why not check out this video I recently did about crazy things happening in the Ahsoka show, which may well save Star Wars.